So next up, as Joe mentioned, we have Candace Carr Strauss. She wears multiple hats in the community. Not only is she the CEO of Visit Big Sky, but also the Big Sky Chamber of Commerce. Candace, thank you for joining us today.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So phase two obviously started today. First off, I want to ask you, what are Visit Big Sky and the Chamber focusing on as we take the next step in the reopening process?
Well, I'm actually going to reverse that order, if you don't mind, Brandon. I'm going to start off with the Big Sky Chamber because our efforts there with that organization are really trying to equip our businesses in this new normal that we're all living in to be prepared to take visitors while at the same time ensuring the health and safety of their workers. So everything we've done over the past 2 months has really evolved around that one focus. We created a business assistance hotline about a month and a half ago that provided intellectual support for our businesses. We launched the Big Sky Save Small Business Micro Grant Program that gave 57 micro grants out to the businesses located here in Big Sky to help them survive through all of this pandemic and economic downturn. Most recently, we delivered on the Friday before Memorial Day weekend, which typically is one of the most traveled weekends of the year, but wound up being extremely down year over year, actually the worst in recorded history that AAA has been recording visitation for the holiday. But we wanted to make sure our businesses were prepared, so we delivered 80 different reopening bundles, which included PPE such as masks, gloves, hand sanitizer, open for business signage, but also messaging around practicing hand washing, safe social distancing, wearing that PPE and what that meant to us. And then the last part of that equation is we're going to provide some plexiglasses for really consumer-facing retail and restaurant operations that need that resource. These were small businesses from 1 sole proprietors to 20 employees, and who are really fighting to be able to pay payroll, who are struggling to pay their rent. So we were able to, by reallocating some of our FY20 allocations from both the Big Sky Chamber and Visit Big Sky, to grant these monies out to our businesses and help prepare them with what is needed to function today. On the Visit Big Sky side, we're really more customer focused and focusing on that visitor who we hope to attract back to Montana. Our messaging has been a staged messaging throughout this process, whereby we started out just continuing to inspire our future guests, because we didn't want to go radio silent, because there is a lot of noise out in that landscape right now of tourist destinations globally who want to bring back visitors to their destination. And so we wanted to make sure we were still staying top of mind. We were communicating plan today for a travel tomorrow, which that hashtag was from the World Travel Organization. And just inspirational messages. As you can see, also the state of Montana has been utilizing the campaign, Montana is worth the wait, and other destinations and regions throughout the state have followed suit to that. However, as we move to the shelter at home being lifted from the governor and allowing Montanans to move about the state, because just like our out-of-state resident, non-resident travel, resident travel is also a huge revenue generator for us. And so we put out some messaging that was feeling empty, as in MT, to our Montana residents. Well, let Big Sky fill your tank back up and come visit now, because we're here and we're ready to welcome you back. So that was our first phase of proactively going out with a message to try to bring guests back to our destination. With the announcement then, which was a 2-part announcement by the governor to move to phase 2 of reopening Montana, the lifting of the 14-day self-quarantine obviously was huge, because to get someone to come here and shelter in place in a quarantine for 2 weeks wasn't a realistic request. So that was the first shoe to drop. However, we all anxiously waited on the edge of our seats to get that recommendation letter to Superintendent Cameron Shawley, who we heard on one of these talks previously, about the opening of the 3 Montana gates, of which the most trafficked is our west entrance as a gateway community to the park that sees almost 1.7 million visitors a year go through its doors. So that happened this morning. I talked to our friends down at the West Yellowstone Visitor Center. There were cars lined up at 8 a.m. for the park preparing to open at 10. And it's been a steady stream of traffic. However, we were pretty smart in that we chose a Monday to do this reopening. I'm not sure if many people follow. We try to watch other national parks and what happens prior to our reaching certain stages, to lessons learned and not have to kind of repeat mistakes. But Arches National Park opened on Friday at 10 a.m. and with 3 hours was at capacity and had to close the park to visitors. So we'll see what our weekend travel looks like and leads to as we move into Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to say the least. So it sounds like you've had your hands full working with a lot of local businesses as things progress. So what have you been hearing in terms of hopes and concerns from local businesses, as this reopening occurs?
Well, I don't want to steal any of the thunder of my compatriot here who's going to speak later, but Eric Morrison is going to speak a lot about that. We've been collaborating and working with many partners, private partners, as well as the Resort Tax Board across the community for that messaging to keep our employees and our residents safe. I think that's the single largest concern that I've heard and continue to hear is how are we going to maintain the low case rate, the low hospitalization rate, the low death rate for COVID and that virus in our local community and in Montana. I did have the opportunity today at 2 o'clock to speak with Director of Commerce, Tara Rice, who from the governor's announcement last Thursday was communicating more out how tourism regions and CBBs, DMOs, the Destination Marketing Organization, which is what Visit Big Sky is going to help carry that message forward to our prospective visitors returning to the state. There are 3 main bullets, and this is all available on the visitmt.com website, but they're really pushing a public health message here for our first 2 weeks as we ramp back up to bringing guests back to our market. And that includes to know before you go. We're really trying to get guests to educate themselves on what those expectations are in our destination for when they come here. The best way is to be prepared, right? To know what you're going into. Second is if you're sick, to stay at home. Obviously seems like a pretty natural and logical thing to do, but I guess we need to reiterate it in this day and age. And then lastly, to understand that some of our services around our destination, our businesses, they're on a phased reopening. So they're not going to be at 100%. And to have patience with that, with our hospitality frontline workers and those small businesses as they're trying to adapt to operations in this new normal. So really to be patient and understanding and respectful. So I personally my concern is that we can do all of this messaging and put it all out there. However, what we're really going to see in return is dependent on the individuals who come. I had to take a last minute 25-hour road trip to St. George's this past weekend, Saturday and back Sunday, just to pick up my mother, who is an at-risk individual. And you would never know a public health pandemic is going on in St. George's, Utah. The state of Utah was never under a stay-at-home directive. And so the number of people who are walking around the destination, no masks, no gloves, in spite of all the signage that you do see when you walk into different places, was pretty startling. So I think what our next challenge as a destination will be is that we're doing all of these things proactively to communicate what our expectations are and what we request visitors to do. But I think we need to be prepared that if we don't see that being honored, what are our next steps in mandating that be done in order to service someone at a business?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you mentioned traffic and traveling and preparedness. So that leads into my next question. In your opinion, what should Big Sky businesses be focusing on most with the increased traffic entering the community?
Well, I think we need to be prepared to walk the walk. We have to model the behavior that we ourselves expect to see in others coming here. And if we aren't willing, as we are at our daily job that's consumer facing, to wear a mask or wear gloves, then how can we expect that of those who are entering the business? And so I think there's a broad spectrum of people everywhere and what their thoughts are on the impact of utilizing that PPE. But I think it's an employer's responsibility to the public and to their workers to ensure that their workers are adhering to those new restrictions in wearing those pieces of equipment and practicing safe social distancing, hand sanitizing, etc. I think it's important to note that they should also recognize all of the resources that are available to them as a business to reopen during this time. So between the Gallatin City County Public Health Board, as well as national industry associations such as the American Hotel and Lodging Association, the National Restaurant Association, they've all provided very clear guidelines on how to operate safely, from trainings that are via webinar, as well as written, to checklists and trainings for your employees on how to function. And so I hope that all of our businesses will know and can reference the bigskychamber.com website where those resources can be found. They should never feel that they're alone in this effort to reopen their business.
Yeah, absolutely. So you briefly touched on messaging before, especially at the state level. So I wanted to take a step back and revisit that. What is Visit Big Sky's messaging going to be focused on as travelers begin to circulate freely throughout the state?
Yeah. So as we've moved from that plan today for travel tomorrow and inspirational, it was keep the dream alive as opposed to come live the dream now. So we will be much more proactively encouraging and asking and showing why our visitors should choose Big Sky at this time for their next destination visit. We've had a campaign that's been running really since the beginning of March. It was a demand-driven campaign, a cost-per-click campaign of anyone searching for lodging in and around Yellowstone from our direct flight markets as well as within the state of Montana. And that was a very clear message of our unique selling proposition as a gateway community that has unparalleled accommodations, diverse dining options, and outdoor recreationist pursuits that are just out of this world. So that positioning has been out there and continues to be out there, and demand in that campaign exceeds that which we've been serving up with our limited resources. And so we hope as we move forward to be able to continue to serve that demand with those messages. And in addition, we'll be launching another campaign here probably in the next week that is retrofencing and retargeting all of our guests that were here for the winter 1920 season. Those individuals already know us. They know our small town charm. I think they can have a sense of security and safety in returning here. And some of Visit Big Sky's summer research from this past summer showed that 83% of our visitors who were surveyed during that time are repeat visitors to the destination from winter to summer.
All right. Well, thank you for that information. Last question I have for you is a bit of a reflection, but I wanted to get your opinion. If you could choose one aspect of life before the pandemic to restore, what would it be and why?
Aspect of life is to travel freely. You know, it's interesting. I took this car ride on Saturday and I crossed the borders of 3 states, three big states that take a very long time to traverse. And having lived in Europe where individual countries are reflective of what our states are, our freedom to jump in a car and drive, 10 hours and be somewhere else is really truly unique to us as Americans. And if I could push any button, it would be to push back that to travel domestically as well as globally with the freedom that we did before. It will not be the same for quite a while.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we did show the true value of the visitor economy, what it means for our local communities as an economic driver that provides the quality of life and our livelihoods in the places that we do get to live in and call home, these beautiful, amazing spaces in Montana. And so I hope we don't take that away, lose that feeling of how valuable it is, because I think we can take for granted sometimes that visitors do have a choice of where they go for their trip. And we need to embrace that, welcome those visitors, and cherish the fact that we are chosen.
Yeah, that's a great point. Well, Candace, thank you for your insight on the tourism and commerce front. Appreciate you speaking with us today.
Brandon, can I throw in one little sidebar? I do have a message from the Montana Department of Commerce. As everybody is aware, we have the 3 bridge decks projects going on here in Big Sky, and they just really would like to ensure that people are prepared to stop near those bridge areas and only proceed when the traffic light is green, that there are vehicles waiting in line, and so to be cognizant of all that is going around, around you. There are pull-ins to different businesses as well as driving out of different businesses. And so there's a lot going on, and we just don't want to see anyone be hurt. We will be including this in our visitor communications as well. and that if you do see dangerous driving, you can call 911, but you can also call the Gallatin County non-emergency dispatch number, which is 406-582-2100. Because the last thing we want is anyone hurt while we're making infrastructure improvements to Montana Highway 64 and US Highway 191. Thanks, and I apologize for the last minute insertion.
No, no problem at all. Thank you for that note. It was very important. But thank you again for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.